Hello and welcome to Chapter 5. In this video we'll be looking at tissues and we'll be looking at systems. So to begin with, a tissue is a collection of similar cells that act together to perform a function, a specific function. In the last chapter, cells, we looked at the generic cell. Now we're going to look at specific cells and how these specific cells are classified into four main types: epithelial, connective, muscle, and nervous. And they have a distinct shape and a function for each one of them. So the first one is epithelial tissues. The job of epithelial tissues is to line and cover, to protect it. So it lines and covers the inside and outside of the body. Because you want a tight covering, you've got the cells packed together, forming a sheet. Now, it usually has a very good nerve supply and a good blood supply, so it does have the capacity to renew. Now, the functions of epithelial tissue are to protect, such as your skin, to lubricate, such as in your stomach by giving mucus, to give off enzymes, like in your stomach, to help digest, like in your stomach. Also for transportation, to get things into different areas, to excrete, and also for sensory reception, such as on your skin. And then the last one is reproductive, and that's because the oviducts have are epithelial tissue, okay, because they line things. Good. Now, when you look at the classification of epithelial tissue is classified by two things. The first one is based on its shape. Squamish is flat. Now remember that squash and squamish kind of sound the same. Cuboidal is cube-like. Columnar is a long, tall column. And transitional is stretchy, and it will vary with shape. So when you look at the diagram, so these ones up here are squished. So this is simple squamish. Then these ones look like cubes, and these are found in your kidney tubules. And that is cuboidal. So it's, and then inside your gut, your intestines, are these tall, long columns, and that's called columnar. So the first way to classify epithelial tissue is based on shape. The second one is to be based on its arrangement. Are they simple, meaning one layer? Are they stratified, meaning several layers? Or are they pseudostratified, pseudo meaning false? So does that mean they look like they're layered, but they're really not? So when you look at the skin or the lining of the throat, you've got stratified squamish. So you can see how they're flat, but there's many layers of them. In your glands, you have stratified cuboidal. And inside your, this is showing ovaries, you have pseudo-stratified columnar. Okay, so epithelial tissues are based on shape and arrangement, and then you kind of pair up the two to go with it. The second type of tissue is connective tissue, and the function of connective tissue is to connect or support, and it's the most common tissue type. So it holds things together, providing support and structure. So anytime you think where things are supported in structure, that is a type of connective tissue. It's found in your organs, in your bones, in your nerves, muscles, membrane, and skin. Examples would be tendons, ligaments, your adipose, which is your fat tissue. The features of connective tissue is that it usually has a good blood supply and a good nerve supply. So with the exception of cartilage. And there are three basic elements to all connective tissue. You have your cells, you have your ground substance, which is called matrix, and you have your fiber. So you need to look for those three things. When it comes to connective tissue, there are 5 different types. Sometimes there's 7 different types because there's subcategories. So when you look at loose, it's kind of net-like. Loose is, an example is your adipose tissue. So you have your fat cells inside this connective tissue. Okay? You also have loose connective tissue in your what's called alveoli tissue, and it's because it is loose. Notice you've got your your collagen and your elastic fibers, but they're laid down again kind of like a net, so in a loose way. The next one is dense connective tissue. Dense connective tissue is like a rope, and they can be dense irregular or dense regular, and that means it's tight. Because it is connective tissue and has this collagen, it's very strong, but it does have some flexibility. Unlike the loose connective tissue, which has more flexibility and stretch. Okay, so when you're holding a bone to a bone, such as in a ligament, or your bone to muscle like a tendon, you want strong. So you don't want it to stretch and you don't want it to move. The second type is cartilage. Now, cartilage is found usually at the end of your bones, and the neat thing, it's also found in your nose. The neat thing about cartilage is it has flexibility and cushion, but it doesn't have a lot of strength. So it's easily torn. And as the cells create this thickness, they lose their blood supply and their nerve supply. So this is why cartilage is really hard to repair. Bone is the next one. The bone kind of looks like a tree trunk, but your bones aren't one tree, but many trees lined up together. Then you have vascular tissue, which is your blood. And there's no picture of blood in this one, but it's your blood. And we'll talk more about these tissues when we talk about them in the different systems. Good. Membranes are sheet-like epithelial structures found throughout the body. So epithelial membranes can be cutaneous, such as your skin, serous, or a mucus. And there are different types of epithelial membranes here. Cutaneous is like a tarp of a boat, so it's your outside, if you think of your skin. Serous is two membrane with a space in between. Then you have your parietal, which is usually the inside, and your visceral, which is on your guts. Then you have your mucous membrane. So if you think of wherever there's a lot of mucus, if you cough up or you sneeze up, that's where you have your mucous membranes. And sometimes they are specialized as mucus will present like mucus, which is like a lubricant for oil. And we'll study more about mucus in the next chapter. So notice that mucous membrane has an OUS, and mucus, the slimy stuff, has a U. Not that I'm going to correct your marking, but just so your spelling, but just so you're aware of this. Okay. When we look at serous membranes cover things. So you've got your pleural, which cover your lungs, your peritoneal, which covers your gut, your pericardium, which goes around your heart. Then you've also got your parietal peritoneal, which goes towards the outside of your body, and visceral peritoneal, which covers your gut. Then you have a synovial membrane. The synovial membrane is usually associated with connective tissue, and it's found in your bone joints, and these are called your synovial joints, and the fluid is called your synovial fluid. And we'll talk a little bit more about this when we talk about bones. Okay, so here's an example of your typical synovial joint, such as your knee. When we look at muscle tissue, the third type, there are three types of muscle tissue. And the function of muscle tissue is for movement. And you must have the ability to shorten. Now, when we talk about movement, don't just think about moving outside, but also moving things inside. So skeletal muscle will act on your bones to cause big movements outside. Cardiac contracts, moving blood through your heart, and smooth muscle has to do with your guts. Good. Skeletal muscle is striated. So if you look at the picture of skeletal muscle, here you can see little stripes in it, and the stripes actually go this way, which you need to have, here they are, the strong enough microscope to see. Skeletal muscles are striated. They're usually attached to bones, which cause movements by contracting and relaxing them. These are voluntary, which means you think about it. They often surround an opening of the body, such as the mouth. such as your oris, your mouth muscles. And they are long fibers that have many nuclei in each cell, and the nuclei is usually towards the outside, and you can't see it well in this diagram. Okay. Then the second type of muscle is your cardiac muscle. Cardiac has to do with the heart, so cardiac muscle is found in the walls of the heart. It is not controlled consciously. You don't have to think about it, so it's involuntary, which is good because it keeps beating. And they're arranged in networks. So when you look at cardiac muscle, here you see it's branched. And it's got big nuclei in the middle. Here's skeletal muscle, and you can see the serrations this way. Notice cardiac muscle also has these serrations, and each one of those little serrations is the unit that contracts. The third type of muscle is smooth muscle, and smooth muscle is found in your hollow organs, such as your intestines and your blood vessels. It is controlled unconsciously, so it's involuntary. When you look at smooth muscle, they're long and tipped on each end. Someone said they look cigar-shaped, but I don't think they look like cigars. Anyway, they're long and pointed on the end, and they have lots of nuclei. So here's a little example of breaking it down for you. When you're looking at muscle tissue, consider, is it striated or not, or is it voluntary or not? And that helps with the classifications. Good. And here's an example of breaking down striations and non-striations. Good. Realizing that smooth, move the, when you get your gut gurgling, that's your smooth muscles moving. The last type of tissue we're going to look at is nervous tissue. And the whole idea of nervous tissue is rapidly transferring a message from the body or for the body. So there are two types of cells. There's the neurons, which are actually the tissue that conduct the information, and there is neuroglia. The neurons have parts on the outside called dendrites, and on the inside, the dendrites collect the information and axons take it away. Then there is neuroglia, and you'll see the pictures in your textbook. The neuroglia support, nourish, and connect the neurons. And we'll talk more about the different types of nervous tissue when we actually get to the nervous system later. Okay? Many of the nerves have a myelin sheath around them, which protects them. And there's a membrane called meninges, which also help protect the brain and spinal cord, related to meningitis. A little bit of connection I want you to be aware of, but don't, just to read through and summarize. When you're looking at meningitis, it's the inflammation of the meninges, which is around the brain. It will often cause swelling, which will then put pressure on the brain and spinal cord. And it can be bacterial or viral. Another one is diabetes. The problem with diabetes is glucose can't be taken up in it, and it will impair your tissue production. It affects your ability to heal, and also infections are harder to fight. When you look at multiple sclerosis, MS, it is an autoimmune disease where the body will attack the myelin sheath, and when the myelin sheath isn't there, it's like stripping the insulation away from a wire so it doesn't transport its information long enough. Okay, so tissues are specialized cells working together. When you get specialized tissues working together, you get an organ. And there are organs that you can't live without, which are pretty much all of them other than your gallbladder, your appendix. Even your spleen you should have, but your liver can take over some of the problem. So those are groups of tissues working together make an organ. A group of organs together make a system. And it will form a group of organs working together. Their organs are interrelated, and we will look at the 11 systems in the next video. So just a little wrap up for a review. There are 3 types of tissues. There's actually 4 types of tissues. There's 3 types of epithelial tissue, 5 types of connective, 4 types of 4 types of membranes, 3 types of messenger, 3 types of muscle, 2 types of nerves, and then there are the 11 systems. Don't worry about learning the 11 systems now. That's the next video. Have a good video and enjoy learning about tissues.